But for me, forgiveness is the most important thing that we can discuss in sobriety, because it is the largest stumbling block that we're going to have. Good morning, Heather. I've talked many times about the baseline. Sorry. I've talked many times about the baseline. Lemmy, good to see you. And the baseline for us was always discomfort, right? As addicts, we spent most of the time sober in a form of hate, self-hate, hate of others, hate of society, hate of our habit. And good morning, Dennis N. Good to see you. It is, if you take the etymology of the word forgiveness, you have things depending on what language you look it up in, because there are so many different forms of the word forgive. It comes from Germanic, it comes from Latin, it comes from Greek, it comes from virtually everything. Good morning, Blake Richardson. Good to see you. Good morning, Ethan. Charlie Murphy. 23 years, people. It's a long time. But depending on what etymology you get to, one of my favorites is that it literally, yeah, Ethan, everything is all right. I fell down in my garage trying to get a watch part the other day and hit myself and cut myself over the eye. And this is just sort of blood that flowed down into the little bag under my eye and filled with blood. But I'm all right. I'm suffering from some headaches because of it, but that's normal because of what my brain affliction is. Day 7 for Lemmy. Good stuff, man. 1 week. Now we start counting in weeks, Lemmy. And that's an exciting thing. The only thing, each time you cross one of those barriers where, in the beginning you count in days and then you count in weeks and then you start to count in months. And of course, years becomes a really big thing as well. But those first ones are the most important ones. You certainly are never going to get to 23 years if you can't get to 23 days. But fantastic. 1 week in the bag. Proud of you. Proud of you. So because of the fact that when you're in active addiction, you hate yourself. You hate your dope dealer. You hate the society. You hate. It's the baseline. And it doesn't always feel like hate. Sometimes it feels like pity. It takes, where we just feel so sorry for ourselves. And it takes so many different forms. But what it really comes down to is a hodgepodge of emotions that all sort of center around one form of hate or another. My favorite of the etymologies is the one that comes from the Greek, which literally means to give away. So you give away your debt, right? If somebody owed you money, you forgive them their debt. You're giving it away. It's gone. Bye. Same thing with the hate. And in different religions, forgiveness is the backbone of so many religions on the planet. Obviously, Christianity. The backbone of Christianity would obviously be forgiveness, the forgiveness of sins, Christ dying for that. And for people who are deeply spiritual, there is I think, in my personal opinion, this is one of the reasons why people who have a very serious spiritual belief do better in recovery. Because the number one thing that stands a chance of bringing you back into the life. I fractured the bone under my right eye months ago. Wow. Yeah, that has to hurt. I broke my eye socket once. It's a terrible, terrible thing. So if you can't forgive yourself, then you're going to spend your baseline exactly where you are. You follow me? You will end up being in the same place. This is why people use the term dry drunk, right? Mark and I used to call it white knuckle sobriety. I'm sober. You're exactly where you were because the only thing you removed was the chemical. This is why journaling is such a big thing. This is why coming to groups like this and having conversations with other people who are in sobriety is such a big thing, because the learning to forgive yourself for the things that you did while in the life is absolutely huge. And I feel an authority on this. I mean, I'm a guy that robbed multiple banks. How many is irrelevant, but I robbed a lot of banks. I ripped off a lot of people, untold numbers of people that I rip off. through what I did, through public speaking, through infomercials, through a lot of the things that I did. Those people could all make money, but I knew they weren't going to. And going in and doing that is something that, when you're doing something is wrong, it scars your soul. It really does. It's something that leaves an open wound. And if you don't close that wound, then you will live exactly where you did. The only difference will be you won't have the relief for a few hours of, intoxication. So the key to sobriety is the ability to make that feeling go away without the use of drugs or alcohol. So one of the things that I've done since getting sober was making a list of the things that I've done that I felt injured the world. And then another list of the things that I had done to injure specific people. And in some cases, that injury is physical, and in some instances, that injury is emotional. In some, it's even spiritual. And I had to work through those. And I would love to tell you that it was simple enough to say, well, here's the list of all the people I hurt, and I'm just going to work through that and forgive myself for that. It was literally one of those things that I had to do one at a time. And for me, that took the form of journaling and writing about each person I hurt, how I did it, what my mindset was at the time of doing it. And very often that mindset is the same from one person to the next. It was about getting dope. It was about having a chemical that could make me feel normal. And I didn't care what I had to do to get rid of the feeling. And I didn't care what I had to do to get the money to get rid of the feeling. And that, that became bank robbery. That became, stealing. I would drive down the street. People, I've had this conversation with Johnny before. We've talked about it. But I would go walking down the street, or driving down the street rather. And now when I drive, it's such a different thing. I look at the road, which is really kind of incredible, right? It's what you're supposed to be doing. I used to drive. Todd, good to see you. I would drive down the street, literally looking for anything that anybody had left out. The number of times you see people who are working as landscapers, and they'll have all the tools out, and they've got out their lawnmower, and they've got out the weed eater, and of course they put out that backpack blower, and that's the last tool they're going to use. The number of them that I stole was incredible. Honestly, I couldn't put a number on it, and I have a pretty damn good memory. But if I saw one on the side of the road, I'd say, pull over. I would hop out, run as fast as I could, grab that backpack blower, and then jump in the car. And we would go and take it to the fence that I had, the guy that bought stolen stuff. And the first couple, he probably gave me $150 for. And, it got to a point where I think I was picking up 30 or 40 bucks a piece for him. There was a period of time, one particular summer, where I bet you I stole 3 or 4 of them a week. And it's, what did I do to those people's business? What did I do to those people? And to get through that, to come to a point where I could forgive myself, it really is a matter of giving it away. It's a matter of getting that out of my head for life. And for me, someone stole my backpack blower. Dennis, I'm telling you, if we lived in the same state, I would tell you it was probably me. It's something that addicts do. It's a very easy thing to steal. I stole so much meat that I ended up on the news. They called us the meat bandits. My life was ripping people off, hurting people so that I wouldn't hurt. That's really what my life was. It was hurting individuals so that I didn't hurt. And that's probably one of the easiest ways to describe how I lived, but it's one of the hardest things to, thank you, Dennis. You know what? I love me. And that, I think, is the key to sobriety and to forgiveness, is getting to a point where you can, anyone using a leaf blower deserves to lose it, says John Doe. Well, there's quite a bit of history between the leaf blower and the Scoville brothers. When we film, somebody automatically shows up with a leaf blower. It's just one of those things that has always happened. I live with someone who does fentanyl. That's a really difficult thing, Ethan. God bless you. I don't know that I could do that. No, let me rephrase that. I couldn't do that. opiates being my drug of choice, watching somebody who is on fentanyl at all times would be a death sentence. It would be the nail in the coffin of my sobriety. That's right. Chew on my phone. Good girl. Was your substance of choice fentanyl, because or opiates, or because that's a tough thing. I mean, God bless you if you can stay sober, but that is really, really hard. And it's a very, very difficult drug to get off. In the last 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, we've put close to 40 people on medical assisted treatment. The lifeboat now has a I don't want to offend anybody, but I would call it a ministry. There's groups of people now in the city that I live in that I'm able to get in contact with and help people in mass, because the government, with all of the money on the planet, you see, when you just hit a button and create more money, which we've been doing since the start of the country, sadly, we should be able to put anybody that wants to get into medical assisted treatment onto medical assisted treatment, but they don't seem to have the budget for it in this town. So the lifeboat has been the budget for it for close to 40 people, which, if you remember, I came on here and I said I was hoping to get 136 people by the end of this year onto 130 people onto medical assisted treatment. We're going to hit that number. We're going to hit it before, we're probably going to hit it before September. We're probably going to hit it mid-August at the rate we're going. But watching people struggle to get off of fentanyl, it's really giving me perspective on how tough that drug is. One of the people that we helped last week was it's really, I don't want to use the word fortunate as to describe heroin, but this individual was fortunate in that they lived with somebody who has a close to lifetime supply of heroin. If I were attempting to quit eating bacon, I would need medically assisted treatment to do so. If you were attempting to quit eating bacon, you would need psychiatric care. That's what you would need, because there's just no reason at all to quit eating bacon. Certain things that should just not be quit. In fact, quitting, trying to quit eating. Anyway, so this individual, according to the story that this youngster told me, the person that he lives with, who is an adult, robbed a stash house a few years back. And there's literally pounds of heroin in this person's house. And they were so afraid that they were going to get whacked by the cartels that they have, anyone who forgot to hit that like button, it's calling your name. Yes, it is. So it's one of those situations where they have a very large amount of heroin, and they're not selling it. They're not trying to get rid of it. They're not trying to make money on it. They're just using it. So this person basically didn't have to worry about, the things that most people have to worry about. It has to be said, American bacon is the bomb. It is. So dealing with this individual and trying to help them get sober was really a stretch. Now, they got out of the home. They're no longer there, and it's their father. But they have gotten away from their parents because they would like to get sober, and the parents are not ready to do that. So this person has got to start living in a sober living house, and the reason behind that was, simply put, there's no way they were going to get sober if they continued to live in that house. But I bring this up because they were the only person in this group that is not on fentanyl. The Idaho 4 drug case, they will never admit that. Yeah. So what you have is, I've got a group of 14 individuals. All of them except one is on heroin. And to watch the difference that medical assisted treatment has done in that person's life versus what medical assisted treatment has done for the 13 kids that are on fentanyl, it is apples and oranges. It is absolutely, she lives for attention. You know what she does if I don't give her attention? She knocks watches off of tables and workbenches. She hops up and puts her paw on it and starts moving it slowly toward the edge because she knows that I'm going to go and help her. Ethan, it does suck. It does. And the worst part of the crisis that's going on with the opioid epidemic, not the opiate epidemic, but the opioid epidemic. And I've said this many times on the boat. So anytime I repeat something and you go, God, he says this all the time, it's because so often the core of the boat has heard everything I've ever said, but people catch one video. So it's important to hammer home certain things. And what it comes down to is that heroin or morphine or opium will never get stronger than the plant. So let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, I fell down, Will, in the garage, hit my face on my workbench that I fix watches on. So what you have is, let's say that the maximum potential of the poppy plant is a 10. If you have a great growing season and they cut the bulbs at the right time and the sap comes out that is clean and they let it, they scrape it at the right time, you might get a 10. With an opioid, you can just continually up that number. So while opium or morphine or any of those will stop at a 10, you can make a synthetic opiate go to a 20 or a 30 or a 50 or a 200 or a 10,000. And I know it sounds like that's almost ridiculous, but carfentanil, the opiate that was designed so that people who worked in the veterinary field could use a pain medication on an elephant, or use that same medication to knock out an elephant. That's really what carfentanil was designed to do. So here you have a drug that is, designed to give to a living creature that weighs 8 to 10,000 pounds, and this stuff is ending up on the street. By way of full disclosure, it is not the vast majority of the drug on the street. There's a lot less carfentanil out there than people think. Annette, boy, do I understand that. My brain is not the old gray matter. It ain't what it used to be. But it is what it is. I have poppy pods sitting in a pile. Wow. That's... they're almost impossible to eradicate, which is really kind of odd. I had a friend back in the day that lived in California. He wasn't a friend. I take that back. A guy that I worked for, his brother-in-law lived in California, and he lived on a lived in a double wide trailer that was set in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, literally in the middle of nowhere. And he had phoned California and told them that, you know what, I have a hold on one second. Sorry. He said he had called California and said, I got like 4 acres of poppies, opium poppies that are growing on my property. And his fear was that he was going to get in trouble for this. So the first season he called and told California about it. The second season, California came out to do something about it. And what they did was they cut down the entire field and they put down some chemicals to keep it from growing back, and did absolutely nothing. Did absolutely nothing. They all came back exactly how they were the year before. And this happened 4 different times until finally the state of California said, you know what? We can't eradicate this. There's nothing we can do. It seems to continue to come back. And they tried all these different poisons and chemicals or whatever. And the gentleman just sort of tapped out and let the stuff grow there. And then he met the wrong individual, and now the guy is in the trade. But it is a very, very hardy plant. I don't know what that is, M. Hunt. Somniferum papaver. I do not know what that is. Memorial weekend is here already. Hope you all have a good and safe weekend. Will, thank you. You too. Annette, I know it is early, 4:49 a.m., so you're on my coast, apparently. Plant California poppies. We'd be in a better world if they were using that versus the other. Himalayan blue. It's an opium poppy. I did not know that. Yeah, I did not know that. I have absolutely heard of Himalayan blue, but I did not know that Papaver somniferum. Yes, it is absolutely my substance of choice. I went to this man's house. He asked me if I would come and work for him for 4 days, and he offered me $5,000 for 4 days work. And at the time, I was just a raging heroin addict, and I could no longer work as a public speaker. And I went out and helped with that whole process, and it was one of the worst experiences. I mean, at the time I thought it was a great experience, but hindsight being 2020, I was actually out there while he had already cut all of the bulbs, and I went out with a credit card. Basically, it was one of the pieces of plastic that you use to get into a hotel room. So it's just a flat credit card with no bumps on it or anything. And I went out and scraped bulbs for days and days and days and days, and then sort of assisted with the gentleman that then took all of that goop and turned it into tar. I know of a guy that sells fentanyl and went to jail more than a few times for all the other drugs. Yeah, the thing with AKA Heather Joy says, Tommy, your drug of choice is the lifeboat. A lot of truth to that. It really is a lot of truth for that. They are related to that poppy, although there are differences between the opium poppy. There is a domesticated version of poppies that do not yield the same sap. There are two different poppy plants. There is one that will not yield sap at all. And he's right, they're legal to grow. Now, by way of full disclosure, if you've got 100 of them in your backyard, I mean, the amount of poppies that you have to grow in order to produce any sizable amount of drugs is ridiculous. Bread seed poppy has special pods to keep seeds in. I did not know that either. I do know that you will fail a drug test on nothing but poppy seeds. That is absolutely a fact. When you're on federal probation and your drug of choice is opiates, the first thing that they do is say to you, here's something that you may never eat again unless you want to get into trouble, because they've gotten quite tired of hearing, well, I had poppy seed bagels this morning. You can fail a drug test, Todd. I promise you can. I have seen it happen. Shrooms are legal to grow if for scientific purposes. Well, here's the thing on psilocybe cubensis and all of the other psilocybin versions of psychedelic mushrooms. Currently, there is a psychedelic revival going on in the United States. In the days before Woodstock Rock Festival and Altamont Speedway and all of that sort of the height of what we think of LSD, right? Prior to that, in the 50s, the United States of America was doing a lot of experimenting with LSD, and they were actually paying inmates in federal prison to voluntarily get tested with LSD. And there are some very famous inmates that who were tested with that, and the amount of LSD that they were giving to these people arguably probably changed them psychologically forever. And the name is escaping me, and it's such an unbelievable thing because this guy was just a big part of my youth. But here's the thing. M. Hunt says, I'm a huge part of the psychedelic revival. Thank you. I have a different opinion on psychedelics than I do on other drugs. I've been open about that. I've done some shows on it. I think that there is a large difference between there's a large difference between how they're Whitey Bulger. Thank you. He didn't eat it. They were actually injecting it at that time, and it was Whitey Bulger. Thanks, M. Hunt, because that's the name I could not come up with. But he was part of that group of people that got paid. And the amazing thing is that if you read all of that, they got to a point where they were injecting these people with a 16th of a gram of LSD. And if you know anything about LSD, I mean, if you're starting to talk about that substance in grams as opposed to micrograms, I mean, the amount of LSD that they were giving those guys was just staggering. And they got big money for that. They were paying them $53 a month, $53 a month. Now, that may not sound like big money, but in federal prison, if you get a job and you're what they call a level 1 worker, meaning you just started doing it, it pays $19 a month. And this is in 2023. So yeah, literally mind blowing, John Doe. And he's not kidding. It blew the guy's mind and a lot of other people's as well. And this was not a one-shot deal. They were injecting these people with this once a week. And I believe the test, it ran either 90 or 180 days. So it was almost a half a year getting dosed every single week with just ungodly amounts of LSD. But there was a lot of other research going on with a lot of other substances, psilocybin being one. The ketamine, they were doing a lot of work with ketamine, and even doing some early experimenting with MDMA, which is ecstasy, or today kids are calling it Molly. But there was a lot of stuff being done with that for not the purpose of going to concerts and with your lighter and yelling "Freebird," but to actually looking into working with psychiatrists and psychologists to see about trying to heal people that had some very serious memory problems, people who had been abused and different things. And there was a lot of really promising science coming out of the medical community in terms of psychedelics. They were, even in the 50s, they were starting to work with people in hospice, and they had found that mushrooms in particular, psilocybin cubensis in particular, gave people who had an end-of-life diagnosis a considerable amount of peace. They did want a truth serum. They also wanted they also had a program. There were basically 3 directions that the illegal testing, which is what it should have been, but the testing on prisoners, they were seeing if they could make somebody more violent, because they thought about using this for what do you call it? Making a better soldier. Chris says a lot of Molly is fake and cut with crystal meth. Well, here's the thing. Johnny and I actually had some experiences many moons ago with manufacturing MDMA. And if you look at just what it's methyldeoxymethamphetamine. So one of the absolute base parts of MDMA is meth, but it should be a much more clean version of it than what's on the street. And therein lies the problem. But it's super soldiers. Thanks, Annette. That's actually the phrase I was looking for. See, you guys always sort of bring my mind along. So, but they were looking for a super soldier. They were looking for a truth serum, and they also wanted to know about controlling a society through drugs. Believe it or not, if you want to read just an absolutely bizarre book, will make you feel really great about the good old US of A. There is a book out about the Manson murders, and there's a great deal of research that has proven that Manson was experimented on with LSD through a clinic in San Francisco. And that clinic in San Francisco was set up by a 3-letter agency in the United States of America that starts with a C and ends with an A. And it's really a fascinating read. Someone's going to put the name of the book up there, because I know that I'm not going to remember it. And sadly, I just finished reading it, but it's it's really a fascinating read on what we were doing with. I loved MDA 40 years ago. I could play foosball like nobody's business. That's really funny. It really is. That's really funny. I lived in a state back in the late 80s and early 90s. You could buy ecstasy legal in the state of Texas for a while. And now fentanyl can be found in everything. Scary poop. No question. Absolutely no question. It became something completely different. I mean, it sounds really stupid, but there's no other way to say it in my head. You know, we lived in the golden age of drugs. Most of us here lived at a time where you could experiment with drugs and end up 50 years old later talking about it. If you live in a world now where people start, if you live in a world now where people are going to start experimenting on drugs, they're probably not going to see 50. Have the movie The Manchurian Candidate originally starred Frank Sinatra, and then the updated version of Denzel Washington. I didn't see the Denzel Washington one. By then, movies were no longer a part of my life, sadly. But the original one was fantastic. The book was even better. And there's a lot of everybody on the boat is pretty into other channels, and we've all gone down rabbit holes and worn some hats with some tinfoil on it, at least at some point. But the MKUltra stuff did a decent amount with L.S.D. M. Hunt says, Heather, I have faith that still be therapeutic, but I heard that chocolate bars are strong. I carefully weigh out and measure my micro dosing. Now, so here's my stance on this. You're right, Chris. They used to come door to door in Texas. Chris says ecstasy was used for therapy to make couples open up, to openly communicate. They used to come to your door and knock on the door, and they would say, here's some samples, and it would be stapled to a pamphlet. And it talked about how this was being used in marriage therapy and this and that. And I kid you not, people. I would take it and say, oh, thank you. And I would pull the little baggie off and I would throw it into this big brass thing, like a urn almost, by the front door, because they would come by 4 or 5 times a day and give out samples of it. I saw In Excess at the Astrodome, and on the way in, they had silver buckets. I'm talking about 3 or 4 feet across, filled to the top with ecstasy, because it was completely legal. And there were people in there, like during the night, you'd get hit in the head with a pill probably 25, 30 times at that concert, because people in there were just throwing them all over the place. If you look down on the floor, they were everywhere. It was really just kind of bizarre. So I did a show on this. I know that we got off of the subject matter, but I'm fine with that this morning. My head hurts. But I did a show where I talked about the research that's being done right now, particularly with ketamine and with psilocybin. I actually live in a city currently where you can go and sign up for a medical assisted treatment for PTSD, for any number of ailments, where you go in and you work with a practitioner who will microdose you with psilocybin cubensis, so magic mushrooms. And in the beginning, they were giving you pills where they had taken the stuff and they had basically removed now they're doing it with mushrooms themselves. I did paper once, couldn't sleep for 24 hours. Yeah, it has that effect on a lot of people. Yeah, it really does. So then LSD and all of those trip drugs, right? Drugs that really sort of separate you from your normal consciousness. Some people say it opens up a new consciousness or whatever. I volunteer for shrooms. Sign me up. You can come here and do it. I mean, no problem at all. They will absolutely work with you on this. And by way of full disclosure, I have done a micro dose psilocybin experience since my sobriety. So that is it is the only substance that I have used other than beer. since getting sober, but I did do and it worked beautifully for me, people. I'm not recommending it to anybody. It's something that you need to look into yourself. There are people for whom I don't think it's a great idea, but it's on an individual thing. I think it was an important thing for me, and I got quite a bit out of it. Hey, Skipper, the answer to your question, no problem. And Shirley, I don't know if I was, I don't know if it was Lenny or if it was Squiggy. Seventh Son just won a lifeboat T-shirt, and I will be sending that out with his. He's got a kit coming to him as well. He's going to be starting down the rabbit hole of horology, playing with watches, and he's in for it. But he signed up, so it's too late now. John, I have 10 grams of Thai penis envy in my closet. Absolutely divine. That sounded awful. Yes, it did, but it's funny. John Doe says, "Nice, M. Hunt." I think. I don't know who said the joke yesterday about what do you call a chameleon that can't change colors? A reptile dysfunction. That to me is one of the funniest jokes I've heard in years. I told about 30 people that last night. I used to take apart clocks and put them back together when I was a kid. Lemmy, that's how it starts, brother. And then the clocks get smaller and smaller and smaller. And pretty soon you're popping these things apart and putting them back together. I just saw congratulations. What did I miss? It's so crazy how drugs are pushed down our throats and veins, and then we're called nuts when we get addicted, and it's our fault. But yet it's pushed on the streets so hard. Annette, it's also pushed in popular culture, right? It's, you watch movies and you're just going to, it's so pervasive now. It's now that I got the punchline, it's funnier. Yeah, I agree. It's everywhere, and it's so accepted in culture today. But so going back to where I stopped earlier, as the counterculture started to get really rolling in the early '60s, mid '60s, and with the protests of the Vietnam War, L.S.D. and protesting the war had this in the minds of the government. There was a synergy there. Like, boy, everybody that does acid wants the war to end, and everybody that eats mushrooms wants the war to end. And these people are awful. And it all of a sudden, people don't realize this, but LSD was legal, right? It was you could do LSD. There were no laws against it, but they did not make LSD illegal for any reason other than they wanted to demonize the culture. There is a very famous story about Art Linkletter, who was a very famous man back then. You've probably seen Art Linkletter. He did a lot of commercials when we were all young. But Art Linkletter's daughter stepped out of a window and killed herself. And the story goes that happened because she was on LSD. And my friend Lurch stepped out of a window on LSD, trying to in a corner like this, trying to go from one window to the other in San Francisco on New Year's Eve, and he fell and broke his neck. But Art Linkletter's daughter did not. She killed herself. It had nothing to do with LSD. The government actually had gone to him. There's a lot of stuff to back this up. The government had said there's an opportunity here to really demonize this substance. They were trying to make it illegal, but there is a lot that can be done with that stuff. I don't. And here, I don't want to come off as a proponent of psychedelics. I am a proponent of psychedelics, but I don't think that they are something to eat 4 hits of acid and go to rock concerts. And I don't think it's something to eat a bunch of mushrooms and play video games. I think that used, all drugs were legal at one time, she says. Yeah, no, you're right. But acid was legal into the 70s. Right, LSD was legal until modern times. No, cocaine was everything prior to 1933 in our country. Right, that's really when the the scheduling of narcotics and all of those things, that all came out in 33. Prior to that, you could buy any drug you can think of off the top of your head. At least the big ones, not the designer drugs but all of the big ones, cocaine, morphine, heroin, things like that. They were all available in the Sears catalog, which is just incredible. Lemmy says Reefer Madness was a stupid movie. The reason I put that up there so that everybody can see it is that I'm here doing what I'm doing right now because of the film Reefer Madness. I'm not joking in any way. And same time they stole your gold. He's absolutely right. Same time they stole your gold. So, but when I was a kid, I was shown Reefer Madness in school, and I was not shown Reefer Madness as a joke. They showed me that movie as if it was absolutely genuine, right? You have to be worried about if you smoke some joints, you're going to end up shooting somebody. You're going to jump out of a window. It was a propaganda movie. It's exactly what it was. And it's funny as hell. If you watch it through the eyes of today, Elvis and Nixon wanted to deport John Lennon and police busted Harrison for weed. Yeah, there was so much of that going on. If you do the Freedom of Information Act, the amount of stuff that the government was doing that was just absolutely bizarre, that, during that entire period of time was just ridiculous. Really, really ridiculous. Would somebody tell me why we're congratulating Annette? Because I cannot find it. And now I feel really stupid. More than usual. So because they showed Reefer Madness to me as a film that, that it was real, right? Last Prom. Yep, seen that one too. James Novak, good to see you, bud. You could give yourself marijuana poisoning or toxicity, but most sites agree that it's physically impossible to overdose on. As the level of THC gets higher, I'm sure they'll have to continue to test that. I absolutely agree with you 100%. No one's going to any normal person would have an impossibility of overdosing on that. 16 years. Good Lord, that's a long time. Good for you. That is awesome, Annette. People, did you catch that? Well, that is worth a, you know what? As I know someone's going to say any minute, I have a trophy in a box I ought to be showing you. I'm getting that damn trophy out today. I am going to go do that. I honestly am going to go do that. Annette loved MDA 40 years ago. Yes, she could play foosball like nobody. I've done coke more than a few times and crack, and I felt myself starting to be addicted and told myself no. Wish I could have done that with the beer and the cigarettes. Yeah, for some of us, I think it's easier with some substances to just sort of turn that off. But if it's the substance of your choice, it's really a lot harder. I mean, I abused a lot of cocaine in my life. I did. That's probably in the top 4 of the drugs that I did the most of. But it never owned me the same way that opiates did. I think I've told the story on here before, but I was selling coke by the kilo, and I had a little drug business where I was FedExing stuff from Texas to other parts of the United States, just putting them in a box and sending them, and that was my vocation at that point. And it got really out of control of my use. And then I learned how to cook it. And I used to go to sleep by eating a drug called Mandrax, which was very similar to a Quaalude. They're gone. The only place that Mandrax is still available is in South Africa. It's a terrible drug. But I used to eat Mandrax to go to sleep at night. And then I would wake up in the morning, and I'm not kidding you, like the alarm clock would go off and I would pick up a bubbler that had, crack in it. And I would hit that, and that would be before I even got out of bed. That was just my routine. And I was married at the time. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and I realized that one entire row of them I could move, and it scared the hell out of me. I literally could, my teeth were able to be pushed around, and I didn't have cavities. I didn't have anything like that. The stuff was killing me. and the stuff was killing me. And that was July 22nd, 1992. July 22nd, 1992. And I said, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. And when I said it, I probably had, I don't know, 3 or 4 kilos in the house that I was preparing to send to other places. And my wife said to me, you'll be doing that by the end of the day. But I didn't. I managed to not do it for a lot of years. What are you doing? Why are you chewing on me like you're mad? That's not very nice. You little snot. Stop that. I did coke for 1 whole summer. Went through huge amounts of Amos cookie jar of quarters. It stopped working and the coins ran out. That's actually kind of funny. Ivermectin in coke. Wow. I used inositol and vitamin B12 if and when I put adulterants into it. For the most part, I didn't cut it. I got it cheap enough that it was more just I probably would have made a lot more money, but it was just such a pain in my keister. Yeah, that famous Amos cookie jar of quarters you had. You're lucky that that's the amount of money you went through. I know people that went through bank accounts and houses and let's see something here. All drugs will kill you eventually, even the prescription drugs. They don't know what they are feeding us. You know, it's been my experience that you start taking medication, and the theory should be that I can't type. I'll just shut up. Says Seventh Son. You will not. We couldn't have that. What would we do without you, Brett? The problem with the medications today is that they treat symptoms. The idea behind most medications today is not they. I mean, if you think about it logically, let's say you have a new ailment, right? And that ailment is whatever, right? Silva, right? So you get this Silva, and you need to be treated for it. Well, if they could give you a pill that could cure it, and that pill cost you $200, they would make $200 on everybody who came out with this new fictitious ailment. However, if they can sell you a pill that treats the symptoms of this new ailment, they can sell it to you for $10 a month for the rest of your life. So you have to realize that I think, you know, the vast majority of people in the research game are there to keep the customer, right? There's not a lot of money in curing things, but there's a hell of a lot of money in treating them. You know, I've tinfoil hat stuff. Every once in a while, I talk about this. I'm never picking on someone when I say that, you know, that's a tinfoil hat thing, because I wear one. I am a huge believer in theories. I don't call them conspiracy theories because very often they've come to be proven, right? So, but Ethan Walter says, what does everyone think about weed being legal? I'm not sure it was wise. You know, it's really kind of been an odd thing. As a kid, I dreamed about the legalization of weed, and now I'm not exactly sure about how I feel about it. I mean, I don't think they should be putting anybody in prison for weed. I don't think it ought to be illegal. I just don't know that I like the way that they're handling it in terms of the dispensaries and all of that. And I'm just saying, I'm not saying I'm against it. I really am not. I just don't know. I don't know. And I think it's going to be a long time before I do. I love the concept of what could be done with that money, but that's not really the case. Here's my big beef with that. If you're going to make weed legal, then make it legal. If you're not going to make weed legal, keep it illegal. But you can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Like in the state of Nevada, if you want to go and buy weed, my understanding, and I've only been in the dispensary once. I went in there to check prices because I got into an argument with somebody that told me that the price of weed is actually more expensive in dispensaries than it used to be on the street. And I said, that doesn't make any damn sense. So I actually went into a dispensary to ask them about prices. But legal to grow, I think, is a great idea. I really do. But one of the problems is that in this state and in many others, it's a cash only business. Like, you couldn't go in there and put it on a credit card. And the reason is the federal government says it's illegal. Can you imagine having a business where you make $100,000 a day and you're afraid to put it in a bank? Because that's really where it's at. Let's say you build up a fortune of $10 million from your 2 dispensaries, and then the government goes, we're going to take that because what you're doing is against the federal law. Right now, in the state of Nevada, there are dispensaries on every corner, and it's a federal offense to smoke weed. That doesn't make any sense, and that's just plain stupid.